Hi, I'm Rex Sikes, author of Life on Your Terms, and you're watching my show, Create Your Best Life with Rex. My guests include some really brilliant people, great minds, who have tips and advice and suggestions and strategies and methods and principles and practices for you to transform your entire living experience and make it glorious beyond belief. So watch my show. Hi, I'm Rex Sikes, and you are watching Create Your Best Life with Rex. And my guest today is an amazing gentleman. He is Dr. Fred Moss, who's a graduate of Northwestern Medical School and a licensed psychiatrist who has served the mental health industry for nearly 4 decades. Now, during that time, he's consulted patients, practitioners, medical facilities, nonprofit organizations, and community groups. While his initial interest in psychiatry was to expand on communication as a primary healing tool, a shift in the medical paradigm in the 80s led to physicians prescribing magic pills as the primary way of dealing with emotional distress. Now, the medications, which initially seemed to briefly quell the symptoms, appeared to be exacerbating, even causing the symptoms that they were prescribed to treat. So in 2006, Dr. Fred began taking a new approach with his patients, working with a chosen few to assist them in reclaiming their lives from the clenched fists of medication. He, over time, saw that those who persisted with him gradually and reliably improved once they were free of the medication. And patients began to report frequent success stories that began to open a whole new set of questions about the actual definitions of mental illness and mental health, and the conversations that are created around those definitions. Now, it's around these basic principles that Dr. Fred began to shape his methodology and his work with clients. In 2018, as a matter of conscience, and due to this growing and ultimately unignorable conviction that psychiatric medication actually harms patients, Dr. Fred has since dedicated his efforts to establishing his brand, Welcome to Humanity, which is a home base for his work as a speaker, consultant, and advisor, and for his mental health and life coaching practice as a non-medicating psychiatrist. So, Dr. Fred, how are you today? It's good to have you here.
Yeah, really great, Rex. Thanks for that introduction. You know, I'm more than non-medicating. Since that introduction was created, and you and I have talked a little bit, it's become even more than non-medicating. Now I'm really backed off one more level into non-diagnosing, because I really believe that the trauma and the problem with mental illness isn't about the medications. It's about agreeing that there's something wrong with you in the first place.
You find that people rise to the level of expectations that somebody diagnoses them as having an issue, that then somehow that almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, not only that, Rex, it's actually the only subspecialty in all of medicine for which people are looking to get a diagnosis. People are hoping to get a diagnosis. People are thrilled when they get a diagnosis. In fact, it's also the only subspecialty in medicine that if I would have the audacity to say that you weren't ill, more than likely you would just call me someone who didn't get it and go get your illness diagnosis next door at the next psychiatrist. People want psychiatric diagnosis for whatever reason.
Isn't it also true, though, that the culture of prescribing these magic pills has led people to say, okay, they won't give it to me. I just go to the next guy, the next girl, the next person, whomever, to get what I want, and that they circumvent good medical care to have the diagnosis and get the medication they think they need?
Well, that's the thing is we start looking at it from another step. Certainly that is true. People can, if you don't get the medicine you want from Dr. X, then you can definitely go to Dr. Y, and more than likely he'll get it to you. And if he doesn't, then Dr. Z, she'll give it to you. And, there's just like, you can go to emergency rooms, urgent cares, other psychologists, other facilities, and eventually get whatever you think you needed in order to treat whatever you thought was wrong with you. And this is the point. I think at this point, if we're really looking at this issue of what's wrong with you, that's the question that we're really focused on here. Like, really, in the end, is there something wrong with someone who feels anxious in the present world? Is there something wrong with someone who feels depressed or scared or is even having trouble sleeping? Or, is there something inherently wrong with that person? And what I'm coming up with now is that if we back off of agreeing that there's something wrong with the patient, then the next thing that happens is there's no reason to treat somebody who doesn't have anything wrong with them. And so the medications become secondary, and people do not need to take medicine or even need their therapist any longer, because what they realize is that, being pretty sure that there's something wrong is like a fundamental symptom of actually being normal.
And I have known people who they get a diagnosis and they don't like it, so they go somewhere else to get another diagnosis because they want to get the diagnosis that they're expecting to get.
Yeah.
So if I say I'm depressed, but somebody else says I'm anxious, I go, well, that's no, I'm depressed. I know I'm depressed. And so I find somebody that will then say I'm depressed, and I go, hooray, somebody understands me. Is that?
Yeah, there's a piece of that. We this whole idea of depression versus anxiety, a point that you bring up in this question, is that we think we know what we're talking about when we say that we're depressed or anxious. Like somehow when you say you're anxious, that I understand what you're talking about when you say you're nervous or anxious. I've even had people say, I'm not nervous, I'm anxious. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting thing. Or I'm not sad, I'm depressed. It's like, well, that's interesting. It's like we really expect our words to carry on over there and have somebody see or experience what it is that we think we're describing about ourselves. Now, the bottom line is that being anxious and being sad, being depressed and being nervous, being afraid and being hopeless, even being aimless or being confused or being traumatized or being, even having little intuition or voices in our head telling us what to do or what not to do, or, that voice that says you don't have a voice, that's the voice I'm actually talking about here. These are really, frankly, universal human experiences and don't represent inherently anything wrong with anyone. Now, the thing I can be pretty sure about, Rex, is if you start taking these medications, you will get a chemical imbalance. It's what the whole point is. I mean, the chemical imbalance happens when you take chemicals that imbalance you, and that we may take them thinking that it's going to balance us, but in reality, once we start taking these powerful medications for something that we thought was wrong with us that maybe wasn't, now we get the chemical imbalance that actually creates the symptoms that the whole treatment was marketed to deal with.
This is a fascinating conversation because, there's a lot of evidence now that even the way the drugs claim that they work and what they work on isn't accurate. And so all of the diagnosing and prescribing and treatment has been based on fallacies of or inaccurate results or, fallacious studies, that kind of thing, that don't lead to the same conclusions. I love what you're saying, and I love what you're doing. I think it's important. My background is in learning and in education, so I tend to think of it as we've learned all sorts of really cool things, and we've learned all sorts of really stupid things while we grow up. And some of the things we've learned is that we think we're authorities in ourselves. Like if I say I'm depressed, therefore I am. But as if I know what that means, because I look at, through my own filter, a certain amount of, call it symptoms or behaviors or feelings or something, and then I come to a conclusion. And my response would be, who died and left me God? In other words, how would I know what it is?
Right. And there's a little bit of a distinction here. When, when you're sad, I'll give you that. When you're afraid, when you're anxious, when you don't, when you feel helpless or hopeless or threatened, when you're, terrified, or, when you're, even know when you're anticipating something, or you can tell when you're feeling a bit hyper or a bit sleepy. These are experiences that you can tell. But the point isn't either I'm depressed or not depressed. You could say you're depressed, but if you're depressed, what makes that abnormal? It's very, very, that's the point, is that being depressed is one of the normal state of affairs for all 7.8 billion human beings.
And it doesn't require medication in order to alleviate.
Well, that's for sure. Again, and it wouldn't even be, medications wouldn't be called on if we didn't think there was something wrong with us in the first place.
So going back to your original premise, since there's nothing truly wrong about depression, it's a normal human condition that maybe all of us go through at different times in our life, to call it a problem now exasperates it as a problem.
Exactly.
It existed.
It's exactly right. It creates a prevailing conversation that supports and perpetuates its own self. That's exactly what it does. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with all of this. It's just, millions of people are caught up in this conversation. And I got to tell you, Rex, if I could come up with an explanation for the times during the day or during a week or with my friends or with my partner where I'm a jerk, if I could tell her and tell my friends, oh, it wasn't me, that's actually my bipolar, or that's my ADHD, or that's my PTSD, or whatever alphabet soup I have about my diagnoses, then I'm in on that. I just assume blame someone else for the jerk that I am.
Again, I love it. I'm personally very aware of self-labeling and attempting not to label my behaviors or make excuses or blames or complaints about what I am or who I am or what I do or how I think or feel. And I really resist the notion when people say, well, that's my depression, that's my cancer, that's my illness, because I don't want to own those things. They're not mine. They're, I think a lot of, to take possession of something or ownership of it creates additional issues.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So, there's a couple ways to look at that. It may be frightening to actually take ownership, but in my experience, when you with compassion and forgiveness, you can take care of and embrace the parts of you that you think you don't want to own, whether that's, cancer or obesity or sadness or vulnerability or in feeling incapacitated or stuck or less than. When you can embrace those experiences as being fundamental components of what it is to be human, that's actually the space for which healing grows from, right there.
That's beautiful. That's truly beautiful. I have for a long time been a critic. I mean, my background's in communication and psychology, and anthropology. But my point is that I have felt from the 70s on, I mean, it may have happened way earlier than that, but at least from the 70s on, that a lot of that and media has inculcated people into thinking that they have more problems than they do, that they're broken when they aren't, that it's not their fault somehow, and that they can be coddled and they don't have to take responsibility for anything because they're a victim, not a victor. They're a survivor, not a thriver. And hence we've got a lot more predominant. We see these predominating cases, I guess, or patterns in people where it's not my fault that I'm this or that or the other thing. And what I love about what you're saying is, one, you're not broken. You're human, and you're going through a human experience. And two, through forgiveness and compassion, you can find a way to move through whatever you're going through, maybe more easily or quickly, or alleviate it in some fashion that medication and the diagnosis isn't going to do.
That's right. Medications and diagnosis, by definition, perpetuate the conditions. In other words, when you start medication, you got to come back every month and get it. When you have a diagnosis, you need to, you need to actually do stuff that's consistent with that diagnosis. And there's nobody, we're not trained as clinicians to take away diagnoses that already exist. And frankly, we're not really trained to take away medications that aren't working either.
Right. Oh, that's a very big point that you make right there.
Well, that's right.
What I mean, I hate to have you guesstimate, but what would you guess? How many people are on useless medications that don't get off them? And I'm not asking you to come up for a number, but I'm saying it is probably a whole lot more than we think.
That are on medications. It's, I wish that all they were useless.
Well, that's true. I mean, the ones that aren't useless that are creating more harm. But I mean, the idea being that they're getting medications that, I mean, I'm kind of saying what your theme is right now. They're getting medications that don't work to serve the purpose that they're prescribed for anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, again, that's the whole point. And it really comes to, this is where the work of Welcome to Humanity really comes to bear, which is for the people who are really sick and tired of trying all the different medications or different treatments or different therapies, and they just see that, the whole point of mental illness is to contain it, to make it go slow, to deteriorate slower than it would if you weren't treated, like to have somehow treat it as a terminal condition that you're stuck with the rest of your life. That's one way to go through life. But in my way of thinking, that is a massive sell-off of a possibility of having an empowered life. If one can really grasp that the troubles and trials and tribulations that one is going through in their life is actually, I don't like using this word, but people think I'm saying something good, but it's actually perfect. It's exactly what your experience is about. Perfect, not good, just perfect, not good, not like better than bad.
But you're getting perfectly
what's so.
Right, perfect. Something can be perfectly stupid or perfectly evil. I get your point.
Yeah, it just is what's so. And when we can grasp ourselves, when we can embrace what our full experience is and give being to that, like grant being to that, and also, be kind to ourselves, be compassionate with ourselves, be honest with ourselves, be vulnerable, be authentic, like actually take on what it is to deal with the uncomfortable nature of what it means to be a human. And sometimes it like every day, it's uncomfortable being a human. We all run through stages every single day, including you, including me right now, today. There have been moments today where you have been remarkably uncomfortable, at least for moments. And, you're like, no, I wasn't. Oh, no, actually you were. And then you recovered, but there was like moments where you were afraid, or you were nervous, or you were depressed, or you were, and look, all of this is perfect. This is the gift of being human, is that we get to experience everything from the stuff that is really, really desirable to the stuff that we wish we would never have to experience again. And each and every day we get a potpourri, a whole smorgasbord of those experiences. And wouldn't it be great if we could be kind to ourselves, if we could be accepting about the fact that those are just regular, normal, no kidding, run-of-the-mill, fundamental human experiences.
Dr. Fred, this is beautiful. It truly is. And, I would venture to say that the ancient mystics seem to get it better than we did. They didn't have technology. They didn't have mechanical stuff the way we do, maybe. They may have practiced with some herbal stuff, but I mean, essentially, I think people understood at the notion of this too will pass.
Yes.
That everything has an ebb and a flow. Our body has an inhale and an exhale. Our heart beats and rests. We aren't constantly one thing versus the other ever. And I would venture to say that most think we're resourceful, that all of our experiences, good and not so good, and all of what we consider foibles or troubles or issues or problems are also resources in a particular context. Not in every context, perhaps, but in the right context, anger is appropriate. In the right context, sadness is appropriate. In the right context, anxiety or fear would be appropriate. So they're normal human emotions that come and go throughout the day, like every day, there's a season for everything. And what you're embracing and suggesting is that people just need to learn to be human and to accept themselves and be aware that they are having a human experience while they're on the planet.
Exactly. And even as you speak, I noticed something, which means, you said appropriate, like depression's appropriate in certain circumstances, anxiety, fear. It's also appropriate to have inappropriate experiences.
Exactly.
Being inappropriate is another function of being human. I mean, we think we have a judge, like, okay, if X happens, then we should be depressed. Well, what if we're depressed and we don't have the obvious, precursor? Well, that's called normal too. That's called human. We all know that one. It's like we turn around, we're like, wow, I feel lousy and nothing happened. Okay. Welcome to humanity. And that's how we got to welcome to humanity, frankly.
I love it, and I love it about being human. Now, we talked about the 80s with the rise in the magic pill, but isn't this all kind of like, I mean, knowing where it comes from doesn't necessarily do anything, but it might help put into context for certain people. Like the whole mechanical age, like we've gone from being a human who relied on themselves to needing team animals or herd animals or something to survive, to machines. And now we're trying to replace ourselves with our bionic parts and, all sorts of computers, and talk about downloading stuff and putting chips in our brains and everything, as if we're not enough just the way we are.
Exactly.
and that leads people to what you said, where we think that there's an appropriate way of being and a non-appropriate or an inappropriate way to be, when it's all good. It's all part of the experience of being a human and alive on the planet.
You're catching on perfect, Rex. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like really just getting that even when you feel horrible, that's perfect too.
Well, and the enlightened person would say, when you're feeling horrible, you're feeling horrible. And when you're feeling wonderful, you're feeling wonderful. And that's just what life is all about. And yet most citizens of this planet would say, I don't want to be there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to have that experience. It's too painful and I got to do something. So give me a drug, give me a pill, give me electroshock, cut it out, do something.
Right.
So
yeah. Look, the deal is if the drugs or the pills or the electroshock had any value at all, I would continue to prescribe them with enthusiasm. I don't have a problem with you taking something that works. However, in the world of psychopharmacology, we haven't really found anything that works. There's no studies that show anything that works. There's nothing that really works at all. Sometimes they compare it to placebo, but really there's a thing like if you have a mosquito bite on your elbow and you go to a clinician, you're just tired of it. It's been 2 weeks and it continues to bug you and you can't really scratch it because you can't reach it. And you're just like, so you go to a clinician and the clinician says that he's got a cure for it. And you're like, oh, cool. That's great. I knew you would. You're a great doctor. And he cuts off your arm at the shoulder. Now, I need to tell you that if you stay focused on whether or not there's a mosquito bite on your elbow and you come back next week, there's been a cure. You have no mosquito bite on your elbow, I promise, because actually you have no elbow. Right. And that's a little bit of how modern medicine takes on psychiatry. It's like we could take away your depression and all it'll cost you is all of your moods.
Exactly. And we'll create a shuffle in you and we'll keep you drooling and we'll have you babbling and rolling around in a corner. Yeah.
It's right. Exactly. And you know what, though? You might not be depressed, or at least you won't see yourself as depressed. Other people will see you crying in the corner. And when they ask you how you're doing, you might say, I'm doing fine. And then they'll agree that you're doing fine, when really, what this is a chemical imbalance. Rex, there's never been an industry in the history of the world, and I mean that. There's never been an industry that has had a greater profit margin than the psychopharmacological industry. And what I want to say about that is it's not their fault for making the profit. And it's not the patient's fault either. It's in the whole culture that if I'm feeling bad, there's something wrong with me.
And hence the diagnosis.
Exactly.
Now I know what's wrong. I have an answer.
Right. I have an answer. It's not me. That's my answer.
Exactly. Right. It's out of my control. So I need a drug or I need some procedure done. Now, but how do you address this? I mean, this is the culture that gave rise to ADHD and ADD and is giving kids drugs because they're not. I argue that what's happened is that you take a thriving young child, stick them in a room, give them crappy food, processed food, take away all their recess and gym hour, tell them to sit and then pay attention to somebody who really can't captivate them after they've been able to watch Sesame Street or all these learning things that are bound, that do tend to train us to not pay attention anymore. MTV, even NYPD Blue, the kind of moves of the camera and the quick cutting away, and every 8 seconds there's a chip. And then you say, well, it's their problem. They need some kind of drug in order to be controlled. And I would always say, give the drug to the teacher so that they can keep up with the kids, or but
that wouldn't. I would be glad to do that, except that wouldn't work leave the teachers in the same problem. So we're not going to do that. It's like blaming the logs for catching on fire. It's like putting retardant on logs while you're lighting it up. And it's like blaming, what kind of logs are these that it responds to a torch? And it's like, well, so we got to work on those logs.
So an interesting point, I guess, and I'm trying to choose the right words here.
Sure.
Is that if there's no diagnosis, there's really no problem. I mean, it happens when you say Johnny has an attention deficit disorder, or
Now we're on. Now we're game on starting then.
Mary has an issue, when they're just being their normal, natural, active self in conditions that we have somehow deemed as appropriate conditions for a child. They should all sit in a classroom for 6 hours a day, and they should all pay attention in a certain way, not accounting for that everybody learns and processes differently, and that people have different amounts of energy. And I mean, if they said, "Hey, Johnny, go walk around in the back of the room, just don't distract anybody," or Sally, go, if you have to stand and spin, go stand and spin, but pay attention, and you're still, I mean, it just seems that we have gotten so into this. We have to control our population, both, children and adults, through medication, not just because of the profit margin, but because there is an issue of control. If we can say there's something wrong with them, now we've got them hooked for life, whether it's in a maintenance program with drugs or thinking there's something wrong. And if they think something's wrong, they're not going to ever rise up and be a full, living, thriving human being who says, "Wait a second, I disagree with you," because they're conditioned to be docile.
Yeah. No, there's something. There is something. Again, I'm just going to use another analogy, and is this idea of if you. There still is an exit ramp. I guess that's my point. There's an opportunity here to get that it is not them controlling us. It is us relinquishing our own responsibility for our lives.
Right. Absolutely.
At any given moment still, and Lord knows it doesn't have to last forever, although there are some people who think it can last no matter what. And, the opportunity exists to be empowered as the captain of your own life.
Right.
It exists. And it is only when you relinquish that, when you go to a barbershop enough times, and I apparently have, is that you get a haircut. When you go to a barbershop enough times, you get a haircut. When you go to mental health department enough times, you're going to get yourself a diagnosis. And once you get that diagnosis, it'll be one that works for you, even if it doesn't work for you. Like, oh, damn, I got post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, well, what does that even mean? Well, it means I can't do X, Y, or Z, and you can't count on me for A, B, or C. And it means that can't even count on myself. And it also means I have to take medications, and I probably can't work, and I need to be careful around my family. And it's like, wow, maybe none of that is true. Maybe really until it's like, welcome to humanity. And there's an opportunity here to get that you can be responsible for all of your actions, including the one that caused damage, and do something about those right away. Like really own them and fix the impact you've had on others, and I make mistakes every day. I don't know about you, but I hurt people, and sometimes I say things or do things that are, cause damage. And the measure of an adult, or the measure of a good person in my world, is one who can acknowledge when we're wrong, actually own it, and then fix up the mess, and then, apologize, or at least get on even footing with the people that we have impacted. And then, out loud say that you're not going to do that anymore. Like you have no intention. That's how you handle mistakes when you hurt someone. But I'm drawn just like anyone else. If I can get another reason, like blame you or blame it or blame my condition, I just assume do that, then take the vulnerable responsibility for what I've done in damaging another person.
Well, I am a huge proponent. I 102,000% agree with you on responsibility and accountability, and no blaming, excusing, whining, or complaining. I think that when you take responsibility for your entire life, for all your thoughts, feelings, words, and behaviors, your life begins to transform. I mean, because now you own it, and you're not relying on the outer world or other people to do something for you. You're doing it for yourself. And if you want to have a successful life, you make it happen. It's not going to happen for you. You're going to make it happen.
Right.
But in that, what I think is, going back to a little bit in my question about our culture, I mean, I think people need to wake up to the fact that they have in some ways been programmed. For example, a lie detector is not acceptable in the court of law. You cannot use it in because they go, the science isn't verified. And because it's not just the science isn't verified, we know the science. It's that it's interpretive. It relies on the expertise of the administrator to ask the right questions, and then they interpret the results more than anything else. So there's human error. And yet in a court of law, psychiatrists and psychologists are oftentimes consulted, which to me is the same issue. I mean, it's and you can bring in this psychiatrist for the defendant, you can bring in this one for the prosecution, and they'll go to bat on, who do you believe in terms of their diagnosis, the prognosis, and all of that.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. I do some work in the courts. I've been an expert witness a bunch of times, and there's the role of psychiatry can be pretty twisted inside the legal system. You can, I've been on one side of a particular issue and had a prominent psychiatrist actually saying the opposite on the other side of the issue. And, presumably he actually believed what he was saying, but that's a whole different thing. And there's an opportunity to really get that, all these things are judgments on the observer. And there's a possibility. What's here to get is that, life is short, and there's all sorts of trials and tribulations and all sorts of things that are, they're incongruent with how we perceive reality and all those things that can really occur. What people want more than anything, Rex, the thing that people want, and this includes felons, and this includes parents and kids and friends and siblings. It includes colleagues, and it includes authority figures. It includes everyone. What people want more than anything is to just feel, just be heard, just be connected, just be communicated with. It's amazing. I've worked in some of the prisons in California, in Pelican Bay and in Folsom State. And the best work happens when you actually hear someone. When that person feels like, wow, there's someone who just heard me, then their life changes and my life gets to change as being a function of their life changing. And all people want more than anything is to be listened to and heard. And there's ways to get that done that have absolutely nothing to do with any kind of formal mental health treatment.
Right.
We all can do that with other people. We all can listen to anybody. Actually, anybody.
I live under the tenet that the meaning of the communication is the response you elicit.
Yes, exactly.
Now, that may or may not be accurate, but if you adopt it, what I'm getting at is it doesn't have to be the gospel truth, but if you adopt it as the practice and say, well, I just said something and they're looking at me askew, or they're going, I disagree. Instead of blaming them for not understanding or paying attention, adjust my communication to help them understand more so that they can be heard, they can express themselves, and I'm not accusing them, so as a communicator, I think this is beautiful what you say. People do want to be heard. They want to feel heard, not just know that they're heard, but they have to have that connection and that feeling and the kind of validation and that respect. And if you want to help people feel heard and be validated and respected and all that, you have to give your respect and your validation and listen first.
That's right. Yeah. And there is ways to do that. And you can do that with anybody, because Lord knows that we've all done things we're shameful of. We've all done things we're hoping no one ever finds out about. We've all said things that we would take back in a second. We've all continued to think things that drive us batty. We all actually can relate to all of us. I mean, we can relate to almost every human. If we can actually describe what it is that we're disgusted about them with, it's because we're concerned about that in ourselves. And that can be with anybody, with truly anybody.
Do you, and I want to come back to this, but do you suspect that the need to have a diagnosis is the need to be heard?
Well,
I mean, that they're seeking somebody to go, listen to me, I have a complaint.
It's a good question. I think that it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that there's a difference between validating disempowerment and hearing someone.
No, I don't mean from the professional side. I mean from the person who's seeking the diagnosis. In other words,
I'm saying that. No. Yeah. People want to go to a therapist. If a therapist says, yep, you have the right to feel that, and and then says, you will be feeling this way for good now.
Right.
That's where the problem hits. If you can get, my brother beat me up, and he beat me up when I was a kid, and I'm scared. I find myself having habits since those days of being afraid of men. Okay, that's really worth hearing. Now, can you get your brother's not here anymore? And you have an opportunity now that you have, stated this out loud, to live a life of power where up until now has been disempowerment. Now, that seems like it's a healing influence. And yes, it may be, I guess you're right. People rush to a diagnosis because that not only do they feel heard, but in most cases, I think it's a misuse because it is the validation of a disempowered state.
I completely, I hear you, and I completely agree with that. I only meant that in their attempt to feel heard, that they are expressing, it's, they're getting coddled or whatever at the same time. What I just love about what you did, and while it may seem like tough love to some people, you put them in ownership as opposed to the brother or somebody else owning it. The brother's no longer here. Now you have the chance or the opportunity to live in an empowered life.
Right.
You're giving the power back.
Right. No, you can do that. And you can even, believe it or not, you can forgive your brother for being a jerk to you when you were a kid. You can actually forgive him. And
you can forgive yourself for living all this time captive as a hostage to your future.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. You can. And with that forgiveness, again, new openings arise that allow for empowerment where disempowerment has been chronically residing. That's right. That's right.
So for people watching today, I mean, the value and the insight that they can get from just listening to you speak is wonderful. It's incredible. I mean, I'm thrilled with it. But how would somebody start? In other words, they have some issues, so they think, and they're watching us today. What is there something that you would suggest that they?
Yeah. You want to seek out somebody who can hear you. And by listening, I'm not just saying about what you say. I'm saying someone who can get you, someone who can relate to you, someone, so there's something about being that kind of person for others. So one way to do this is inside of creativity. And my book is called, Creative 8.
Say that again, because we're going to have the link in the description below so that people know.
Yeah, we will have it. It's Creative 8. I have a copy of it over there. It's a healing book, a super healing book, healing through self-expression. And this Creative 8 is a book that it's kind of it's not everything we do at all, but it's kind of a little taste of it. And we start looking at, communication requires both listening and creation. So in the creation, our words are limited, but in the fine arts, in the art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, photography, cleaning, even. Those kinds of things we'll create from nothing, and we get a whole new look at how to express ourselves. And we are all artists. Every one of us. You have to be so creative just to live one more second on the planet. You have to juggle so many things and put them in the right spaces and take the next paintbrush and say the right thing at the right time. There is so much creativity just in living one more second on this planet. So any notion that anybody says they are not an artist is simply incorrect. If you're breathing, you're an artist. It's the way it is. So in the world of artists, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, etc., there's an opportunity to be a creator and to express yourself such that you can be heard. Now, the other truth is that communication is a two-way street. And communicating also includes listening. So the number 11, or the trump card of first there's 8, and then there's 2 more, and then there's one extra one, sort of the trump card, the go-to, is helping anybody do anything. And what I mean by that is, if no matter how troubled you are, if you reach out and you go help anybody, and I mean anybody, do anything, and I mean anything, like helping anybody do anything, actually alleviates whatever symptoms you think you're having, whatever discomfort you think you're having. I don't feel like it. I want to just lie in bed and stay depressed. Okay, as long as you realize that that's your choice, you can go ahead and do that, but you don't have to keep doing that. One of the things you could do is go out there and help anybody do anything. And when you do that, the not only does the pain and discomfort lift instantaneously while you're doing that, but by helping another and letting them be heard, letting them be taken care of by you, you get the contagion of health and healing that you have just provided for another. And it's amazing, truly amazing, is what can happen then with respect to your own self awareness and your own self-assessment. And believe it or not, healing, like remarkable, like instantaneous healing, can become available in that simple activity.
Again, that's truly beautiful. If you want help, go help somebody else. It's
exactly.
It'll help you. Yeah, it's amazing. And going back to the wisdom of the ancients, like if you're angry, go, or depressed, go work in a garden, do something physical, hold your breath, count to 10. I mean, there's always something that the person can do. Go help somebody else is truly transformative, because one, you might meet somebody who has a problem far worse than yours, which puts yours, into perspective, I guess. But just the act of assisting another person is transformative. This is awesome. I mean, it's really beautiful.
Yes, and you spoke to this thing of counting to 10 or holding your breath, and I'm going to upgrade that a little bit by saying, sure, Rex, that what I'm really looking at for the healing part of it is in the world of creation.
Yeah.
We are all creators, and we are all creators. Whenever we create something from nothing, that is the essence of what we're here to do. And we there's nothing more exciting and more inspiring than creating from nothing. Yeah. And that's where art, music, dancing, singing, drumming, cooking, writing, and gardening come in. And writing is different than reading. Reading, by the way, is great, but it's not creating. Writing is the creating. And listening to music, man, I love music. I do. I seriously do. Whether it's Led Zeppelin or Johann Sebastian Bach, I love music. But that's not the same as creating music. It's okay to listen to music. It's not creating. And that's the same with art. Salvador Dali, he's great. I love Georgia O'Keeffe. I really do. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm really talking about doing art. It is in the creation. It's not just in finding something else to do with your time. No, it's actually in taking a moment to create from nothing and watch what happens to ourselves instantaneously once you get involved in a project of creation.
I got to tell you a quick story, and that was madly in love with this girl in college, and she was very creative, always doing different projects. And she said, I'm going to take a pottery class. And I thought, I got to take this pottery class too. I got in. I couldn't throw a pot to save my life. I mean, but what I discovered in this class was that I could sculpt, and I was crazy as a sculptor and everything. At the end of the semester, the professor called me in and he said, I'm giving you an A-. And I was like, and I said, why? He said, well, you have your sculptures in the hallways, displayed. And he said, everybody stops. Not everybody likes them. Some hate them. He says, and some like them, but that's art. He said, my entire class, you created 4 pieces of art. And so I'm giving you the A. I'm giving you the minus because you couldn't throw a damn pot.
Isn't that great? That's so great.
But what it did for me was I thought that I had to be good at pottery, but I realized I could create doing something different. And I didn't have to, some people want to draw and they go, I'm frustrated drawing, but maybe they cook, maybe they paint. I love what you're saying. It doesn't, what trips your trigger and what you find your talent in may surprise you and delight you too, because I never thought I would ever want to be a sculptor.
Isn't that great? I could see you as a sculptor, and it makes good sense. And, recently I just joined this studio down the block, and we were so fortunate up here in Northern California, had this place called the Curious Forge, and we have to get certified. And I'm unleashing the artist in me that has been often very dormant for the last 50 years while I decided how to be a boy, that being a boy didn't mean art, and being a doctor didn't mean art, and being being a big man didn't mean art, and now here I am, 62 years old, and really just going back to the artist that took a hiatus for half a century, and now it's time for me to get in tune. So I'm lined up now to do to get certified in ceramics, to get certified in 3D printing, to get certified in laser printing, to get certified in glass blowing, and those are the kind of things that are coming right around the corner. I'm very, very excited about it.
How thrilling! That's amazing. All those different activities and talents, Mom.
Yeah.
Wow, that is impressive. So I'm gonna back up a second here. Again, going back to the grade school, and if we want to do assign blame, and I'm not saying that that's what we're doing or even attempting to, but just so that people can look at our culture and examine it. The thing that always gets cut in classes, in school, and in our communities are arts. They go, oh, we don't have time and money for that stuff. Let's suddenly I think the sun did something weird to me. I'm now in the halo effect. So there was something. But at any rate, you look good, and that's what matters here. I'll do this. So the point being is that we tend to cut out the very things that are therapeutic, that are healing, that are life-giving and life-affirming, in favor of math and science and other things, which have their place, and you can be creative in those as well. I mean, but it certainly seems that the stuff that would be best for our children and our teenagers to be doing or spending most of their time would be creating and learning to create, and not only for the artistic thing, but for their life, so that they could create a fabulous life, create a fabulous income, create a fabulous lifestyle for themselves, because they're used to manifesting or creating things from nothing. They aren't.
Yeah. You're hitting on a beautiful point, and really what's key here is that if you don't do anything about it, then you'll slide. Then there won't be anything to do. If you don't do anything, if you don't actually decide to take on doing art, doing music, communicating with others, helping others do anything, actually self-expressing, being compassionate and forgiving with yourself, and being responsible and accountable for all of your actions. And if you don't do all that, if you don't actually take an active stand to do all that, then the natural course will be to slide, and you'll slide into disempowerment. So it does take some effort above zero to reach a life that is this. It's like, constantly taking steps uphill, constantly taking steps. Like, it takes something to wake up in the morning. It takes something to make your life worthwhile. Not that much sometimes. And then other times it takes quite a bit to get up and actually do something. I got a whole library of books. I look at them, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm halfway to reading them. How do I know that? Well, because I bought them.
Yeah.
I bought them. I'm almost done. I haven't opened them yet, but I decided one day I needed to read that book, so I bought it, and now it sits on my shelf. Like, yeah, I know, at least I know that's a good book. I haven't read one page of it, and it takes something to sit down and open a book, or to sit down and create a poem, or to sit down or to go to the store and buy some ingredients and cook from scratch, or to really go get some seeds and some soil and, find a pot or two or a ground or two to lay some seeds down and tend to a garden. It takes something. But when you do it, life gets transformed fundamentally from the ground up, literally, not just with gardens, but everywhere. And the opportunity arises to have a life that really matters.
I want to hang out with you because I got books that are still shrink wrapped.
Isn't that right? I know. It's like, okay, well, if I get stuck here for a while, I surely have enough things to read.
Exactly.
No doubt about that.
Well, I love this. It is, I always say people aren't born on horses. If you want to learn to ride a horse, you have to actually get on the horse.
Exactly.
Nobody can put you on the horse. You have to make the decision. You got to get on. And then you have to be willing to learn how to ride, or you have to be teachable if you're working with another person. But you got to learn how to work with the horse, and if you fall off, you got to get back on. I mean, there is the responsibility that we have that I think a lot of us have either been inculcated or learned, or we've created the habit of being helpless and hopeless, instead of I can take action on my own behalf, and step by step, I'll get that journey of 1,000 miles. But if you don't take the step, the destination's still over there.
Well, the intimate relationship between what you're bringing up here and then going and getting your diagnosis can't be understated. What we got here, or can't be overstated. What we have here is, once you make that decision that there's something wrong with you, and then you get confirmation that there's something wrong with you, the journey is halted.
Right.
And that's like some grief. There's some sadness there, for the humans that decide, okay, well, that's the end of the road for me. I have blah, blah, blah. Well, not. So you ask, like, who is a good client for the work I do? The clients for the work I do are people who are still alive and are just tired of taking this ride, and tired of taking a ride, and are actually living to a life that matters. They really are holding on to, wait a second, if I stay just like this, I'm never going to have a life that matters. That's just how this is going to go. I'll hang around until life is over, and then that'll be that. Those people who are still alive and struggling with that, and have themselves some sort of juggling of a mental condition, by removing that mental condition, by backing off the diagnosis and reminding them of the perfection that they are, a new level of empowerment comes up that really allows them to take on life like they thought would never exist again. And that can be within family, within finances, within health, within relationships. It can be with anything. And that empowerment can only come if you get back on the horse.
Fair enough. And so I love this, because if somebody is right now listening, watching, and they have an issue, there are things that they can do. They can help others. They can help somebody else. They can become more creative. They can actually take some steps in doing that. And I guess they should know that transformation can happen in an instant, but it may not happen in an instant. And I don't become an overnight horseback rider. I learn and I get better. And as a horseback rider, actually, you always get better and better the more you ride the horse. 40 years later, you can still be improving. But
what do you think about this, Rex? In some ways, I'd say you do become a horseback rider when on the moment that you get on a horse.
Well, yes, I do agree with that. Yes.
And you don't become an equestrian. You're not quite a champion horseback rider. But when you make a decision and then follow through on that decision, going uphill and creating, opening the book, like getting rid of the shrink wrap and opening the book, you now are reading that book. Really, it's not that hard to get to. I got a book out here I want to read. It's been in shrink wrap for 10 years. I guess it'll be 10 years and a day now. Or it can be, you know what? Today's my day to open that book. And when I do, I now am reading that book. No kidding. And there's not that much recovery. That's called transformation,
Right. And the power is in making the decision.
It really is. It really is. And, being good to your word. That's right.
Well, and I think that's true. I always tell people, if you do something, do it within 24, 48 hours. Don't act on it. Don't let it go, because the momentum will get lost, the inspiration, the motivation will get lost. If you get an idea to do something positive and that's good for you or good for other people, then do it right away. If you say, I'm going to clean my office, and go clean a part of it at least, right away. So this is awesome. But I do want to ask you this, because there are those people who go, you know what, I don't have any of these issues. I don't have any of these problems. I don't, but my son, my daughter, my spouse, my mom, my dad, my friends do. How do you counsel them to compassionately love, understand, and hear someone who may be going through difficulty, and they don't want to get out of bed, and this is they've been dealing with this for years or something? How does this person begin to help transform themselves to be a loving care provider, or even a provocateur, if
sure. Well, I think that, I don't have a blanket answer for this. Like, how do you do that? But I think that we'll go back to the basic tenet of healing, which is each and every person, 7.8 billion of us, want to be heard.
Yeah.
So a good place to start, a really good place to start with anybody who's lying in bed, is to listen to them. It's a really good place to start. Even if you think they're full of it, even if you think they're lying, even if they hurt you most of your life, even if they're bad people, if there's any healing that's going to happen, the first thing that's going to happen is someone's going to hear these people. And that's what's here now is like, if you're going to do anything with your colleague or your friend, your friend or your family member who's in bed and doesn't want to get out of bed, the first place to start would be to listen to them.
Awesome.
The first place to start is really, and not just like wait until they're done talking. That's not listening. Listening is actually getting in their world, like actually getting what it is that they're saying through their words, through their non-words. It's funny, us humans, we really can relate to all other humans. And once you're listening, there's going to be a whole new capacity for what's being called for, what's wanted, what's needed. And you might be able to provide something that you wouldn't have been able to do while you were sitting upstairs wishing that jerk would finally get out of bed.
Wow, that's powerful. And I love it because there are going to be those people who go, finally, somebody hears me. I mean, somebody's listening and they know what's going on. And in addition to that, the idea of being so open and available that you're not, there is the notion, I mean, and Napoleon Hill popularized it, but it's been around since ancient times, the notion of infinite intelligence, whether it's your subconscious mind or all of the cosmos, or we're one with source. But, where he aimed, he said, your real power doesn't come from your own intellectualizing this. It comes from managing your thoughts and your feelings and developing certain things until you are open to download essentially from infinite intelligence. So it sounds like when you're truly listening to somebody, you get out of your own mental chatter and you are present with them and you're available to them, so that you may act intuitively or as opposed to trying to figure out what I should do.
Exactly. That's right. Figuring out what I should do doesn't really work. And the intuitive nature, I don't know if you have pets. I have these 3 cats, and I
got 2 dogs right next to me. Yeah.
Okay. So they're remarkable creatures, especially when you have more than one of them. And I think you'll relate to this. When one of your dogs is in any kind of stress, the other dog will come from across the city to find out what's going on, even if they have been like not with each other for a while. There's actually a capacity to get when someone's in pain or someone needs another person, you actually know it. There's a space for, how to be with another person. If you would just wipe out your judgment of that person, if you would, wipe out your assessment of that person, if you would just get that it's you getting in the way of being with that person, then there's a way to be with a person such that they're heard. And once people are heard, that's when the miracles land. I'm telling you, that's where the miracles start, right there. Once people are heard, really heard. All people, by the way, even that guy, even her. No, really, even them. No, including that guy. All of them.
It's awesome. It truly, truly is awesome. And it is so, it's just so wonderful because there's so many,
how hard? It's not hard, is it? It's not hard. We know how to hear.
Right. But I mean, there's so many people pushing agendas, and this is just letting the other person be who they are authentically, and you be who you are authentically. And those two souls or hearts merge, and meet, and then
amazing, right?
It's compassion. Yeah.
It's the best. It is. It's like, this is not, I didn't obtain this information. I've been in a very strong field. I've been a medical doctor since 1988. I've been in mental health since 1980 after dropping out of college and going to, coming home and, Mom, I'm never going to do college again. And she got me a job as a child care worker. And, it's amazing that I'm speaking to something that it seems to me every one of us knows. This is not very controversial, actually. It's not. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your race is. It's like, yeah, this stuff makes some sense. It makes some sense. And it's funny because I knew this stuff when I was 4. Right. And so did you. We all knew this. It didn't go away. We just heaved it off of our plate.
It's true.
Like a good 4-year-old does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
We knew this. We knew this the whole time. And so this isn't coming from the, Lancet or the American Medical Association or the American Psychiatric Association. Not necessarily, no. This is coming from just being a darn human. Welcome to humanity,
It is truly, it is truly one heartwarming and positive and inspiring and transformative. I think that, it's not patentable, and so people are worried about profit, and it's people over profits, not profits over people. And when you're available to hear and to listen, I've done workshops for 40 years, and I've always wanted to keep them small because sometimes I just like to sit with people and not talk.
Yes, exactly.
Most of us want to sit and then worry about the dull spaces where nobody's talking, nobody's saying anything. We get into these guys. And I find that sitting with another person in silence, where you allow it and it's acceptable and it's an invitation, is just so much more. It's transformative. It's enlightening. It's a wonderful way to connect with another person. And you have tapped into this, and you're helping people all around the world, both in your practice and in talking and in your books and in speaking and in consulting. It's just truly wonderful. It truly,
thank you.
Truly
is.
It's
amazing. To me, it's kind of hilarious that it's wonderful. It's like, wait a minute, let me get rid of everything I've learned for the last 58 years and go back to what I knew when I was 4 and bring that forth and see how that works. And it's like, oh, that works really good. Let's just stay with that. There's this actually, I finally am a healer. Rex, I'm finally making a difference in lots of people's worlds. And it's just so simple in some ways to just, it's like, I don't have to make this stuff up. I don't have to remember anything. I don't have to reference books or journals. It's like, hello.
Well, the other thing that you've hit on, which is really beautiful, is if you cut yourself, the body automatically goes to heal.
Yeah.
If you get bit by a mosquito, your body knows what to do. It has its own wisdom. We are our own healers, and somehow we've become convinced that when it comes to our mental health, we need some kind of outside medication or drug or treatment, or something. When in fact we would best be served by learning how to forgive and to be compassionate and to listen and to act in behalf of other people. So yeah, wow, truly impressive. Truly, the most impressive things are always the simplest things. They're the things that are the easiest to adopt, because those are the things we miss most often. We're looking for the complex when in fact it's very simple.
That's right, exactly.
But powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Fred, I know you have other things that you need to do and that you've got other appointments. I'd love to have you back again sometime and
sure.
Reprise this and continue our conversation. I know that who's ever watching right now is getting incredible value, and I encourage the viewers to adopt these practices, and also to click the links that are in the description and go visit Welcome to Humanity and get Dr. Fred's book and the other things that he offers. It's just amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of books that we have in progress. My next book I'm really excited about, and we're just putting together the delivery style of it. It's really the best thing I've ever done. I can't wait to deliver it. Who I am in coaching coaches and who I am in speaking engagements. And apparently people like what I have to say enough to put me in front of people. And then there's also expert witness work, and there's telehealth work. I've been a telehealth provider for a little over a decade, and real proponent and ambassador for the power of delivering work just like me and you are doing. After all, there's no way two men like us would have had a conversation this deep if we would have met in your backyard. There's no way. This is a function.
In my backyard.
I know. And we had it in the telehealth, though. We had it in here. Had I been there, we would still be figuring out where I should sit and where the next cup of coffee is coming from. That's what we're doing. And petting your dogs and taking a walk in the corner and all that. But no, the power of unity inside of telehealth can't be denied. And I have a great team. And, if I'd like to say that, I'm available. And so I'm available for conversation, for discovery. If you're at a point in your life where, your mental health or your mental illness or someone else or love is mental illness is just coming to an end. You just see a dead end and you want to have a resurgence or a reemergence of power in an area of life where you have been residing in disempowerment, then I'd love to talk to you and see if there's something we can do together, or I can refer you to different resources. And the best way to get a hold of me is at drfred at welcometohumanity.net. And that will be loaded here, of course, that website yeah, it's a pleasure to finally just say what I mean and mean what I say and not have to back away from it. So that's part of who I've become.
It's very, very beautiful and very, very powerful. And I am fond of the saying, it's not my saying, but I'm fond of the saying, you can light a million candles off of one candle, but that candle has to be lit first.
Yeah.
And lighting candles, and your candle is lit, and so millions can light off your candle, and each of us who light our candles can help transform the world. And I appreciate all of what you're doing to help and assist people in this process. It's truly, truly beautiful, and you're a beautiful person for doing it.
Thank you, Rex. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure, great conversation, and I'll be glad to come on again. It'd be my pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Fred Moss. Welcome to humanity. You've been watching Create Your Best Life with Rex. Thank you, sir.
Bye now.
That's it, everybody. You've been watching Create Your Best Life with Rex. I hope you will apply the powerful principles and practices you've learned in today's show. And also click the links below to go to my website and my guests. There's powerful programs, principles, and practices waiting for you when you click those links. Do it today and create your best life ever.